This is Phantasialand. It's a well-known theme park in Germany. In fact, it is so well known that many theme park enthusiasts consider it to be one of the best theme parks in Europe and maybe even the world. The park offers a variety of themed environments with impressive roller coasters, dark rides, flat rides, water rides, shows, restaurants and even themed hotels. And this is one of their neighbors. As you can see, their backyard goes right up against the border of the park, and while some of us would probably really enjoy living right next door to a world-class theme park, these people have decided not only to stop enjoying the presence of their well-known neighbors, but also to stop them from expanding. This is the ongoing story of Phantasialand and the city of Brühl. Phantasialand first opened its doors in 1967. Back then it started out as a fairy tale park, just like many other European theme parks. Over the years they started to add more and more rides to their lineup. In 1975 they opened their first roller coaster called Bobbahn, which translates to and in many ways this ride's fate would foreshadow the future of the park. Soon after its construction, the park's neighbors started to complain about the noise this coaster and its screaming passengers made. As a solution, they added walls around the coaster to block the sound, but of course that would make the coaster look very ugly. So they decided to make those walls look like a mountain and renamed the coaster to Gebirgsbahn, which literally translates to mountain railway. Of course, back then the level of theming wasn't comparable to what we've come to expect from Phantasialand nowadays. But nonetheless, the confinements caused by their neighbors made them change this ride, and as a result they had improved the overall quality of the ride. And that is something that would happen more often in the years after. Don't get me wrong though, those fake mountains look like a pile of dog feces. The old Phantasialand attractions weren't really known for their impressive quality. I mean, look at this. Everything looks like it could have been made with paper mache by a child with one hand, whilst cutting off his other hand with a knife between his teeth. And what was going on with those animatronics, if you can even call them that? They look like they've been chewed on and then spat out again before they were installed. This one looks like Harvey Weinstein, if he'd had sexually assaulted young actresses and then been diagnosed with leukemia whilst in jail. I think one of the first higher quality things they built was Woostown in 2002. It mainly consists of an indoor hall with two different Maurer spinning coasters called Windjas 4 and Windjas Force. There are also some smaller flat rides in this area, but since its location is very near to their neighbors, they had to think about the noise complaints again. Which is probably why such a large portion of this area is indoors. This area of the park also has a big lake in it, which is actually a remnant of the old coal mines that used to be there before the opening of the park. There's a path that goes around the lake, and this is where the old fairy tales were displayed. It was always a very quiet part of the park. In 2009 they decided to do something else with this lake. The old fairy tales were torn down and a splash battle ride called Wako Bato would be built. You know, one of those rides where you get to spray water on people in other boats? I don't know if you've ever sprayed water on someone, but I can guarantee you that screaming is involved no matter what. These types of rides are meant to be some of the most chaotic, villain origin story creating types of experiences in a theme park. Of course, the people living in close proximity to this lake would not have liked the noise that such a ride would produce. Luckily Phantasialand was one step ahead, and so they made the quietest splash battle they possibly could. The layout was designed in such a way that the passengers would never be able to spray each other with water, which would eliminate most of the laughs and screams. They also decided to not use any music in any part of the ride, and to top it all off, they made sure that the ride system, bumps and any other objects in the ride would make the least amount of noise possible when operating. All these noise-reducing efforts led to the creation of the most boring splash battle ever created. Turns out these rides aren't that much fun if you can't spray other people with water. But at least they were able to build an attraction right next to the backyards of their neighbors that didn't generate any noise complaints whatsoever. A couple years later, after... What's that? Oh. Hi, this is Quinn. Oh, okay. Alright, okay. Okay, no, you don't need to yell at me. I didn't know. I didn't know, okay? Okay, well. No, I can afford a lawyer right now. No, please don't, okay? Okay, sure, alright. Bye. Bye. So that was Karen, one of Phantasialand's neighbors. And it turns out the people did in fact still laugh and scream in Wakobato, and the neighbors did in fact complain about the noise. But if you really start to think about it, the park had been there since the 1960s, so over 40 years then. At that point you'd think most of the people living right next to the park probably made a conscious decision to buy a house right next to a theme park, right? I mean, some form of noise is to be expected. You could have bought any house in the world, but you chose the one where your backyard borders one of Europe's most visited theme parks, and then you start to complain about the laughing and screaming guests? That's like standing under a waterfall and then complaining you got wet. What did you expect the people in the park to do? Meow?
What do you expect the dogs to do? Meow?
I mean, are they still allowed to have fun? I'm sure that if they went to a theme park... Oh shit. Hi, this is Quinn. Oh, hi Karen. Hi. No. Oh, come on. I mean, you bought the house in 2004. Yeah, but I mean, at least they tried to make it as quiet as possible. Oh, no, I don't have any kids myself, no. Yeah, my grandma's 90 years old. Why? Oh, no, please don't hurt her. No. She just got out of the hospital. My parents? No, let them go. Let them go, please. I'll explain it in such a way that the people will understand you. I promise. I will explain it to them, yeah. Oh, please don't hurt them, alright? Okay, please. I beg you. Okay, yeah, you'll see it, okay? Okay, bye. So that was Karen again. You know, the neighbor. Very classy lady. She just informed me that the noise produced by Wakobato was absolutely unbearable. I mean, the neighbors couldn't even hear themselves think anymore. That was honestly how bad it was. I mean, how could the park have ever built something like that, knowing that these fine people were living right next door and... Oh no, not again. Hi, this is Quinn. Oh, I'm so happy it's you. Oh. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, no problem, okay? Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll ask them to subscribe and like the video. No, I won't forget. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, yeah, see you soon. Alright. Okay, bye. Oh, that wasn't Karen. That was common sense, just letting me know that they were about to leave the conversation. Oh, and you should subscribe as well. The neighbors tried to sue the park because they experienced unbearable acoustic pollution. This led to a quite devastating ruling in 2011 in which the court declared that the Splash Battle ride shouldn't have been built in the first place. Even though Phantasialand had gotten a building permit for its construction, they decided that the city of Brühl should never have approved the permit because they had forgotten to properly calculate how much noise guests made when they were having fun. In this ruling, they said that at the border of the park, noise could never exceed 50 decibels, which is about the same amount of noise as a humming refrigerator. Then, as the icing on the cake, the court banned Wakobato from operating on Sundays and public holidays because, in German law, those are considered to be sacred days of rest. Of course, this ruling was a terrible outcome for the park. They'd have to close one of their newest attractions on some of the busiest days of the year just to keep the noise down. But besides that, they also had to comply with the new maximum of 50 decibels when developing new attractions or areas of the park. As if their options for expansion weren't already limited enough. You see, Phantasialand has a lot of rides packed into a relatively small space, 28 hectares. As a comparison, Europa Park spans around 95 hectares. Efteling's about 72 hectares and the original Disneyland in Anaheim, California is about 40 hectares. And for those of you who don't use the metric system, space is very limited for Phantasialand. So in 2003, when they realized that they were running out of space to expand, an expansion plan was made. If Phantasialand wanted to compete with its biggest rivals like Disneyland Paris or Europa Park, they had to become a short-stay destination resort instead of just a day trip destination. So the expansion plans included new hotels, a large water park, an event center and more space for parking. All of this would be part of a 30-hectare expansion, which would give the park enough freedom to expand for decades to come. But of course, that never happened. As soon as those plans were announced, local environmentalists said that the suggested expansion area would completely destroy the Antenfang forest, which is actually an FFH. Forest for hobos. No, of course I'm kidding. It stands for
Fuck! Fuck, 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 fuck!
It actually stands for Flora-Fauna Habitat, so it's a protected area. The environmentalists wanted to save the 50,000 trees that were part of this forest. Other activists claimed that selling a public forest to a private company for commercial entertainment purposes was a capitalist move that shouldn't be accepted. Of course, Phantasialand can't do anything without concerns of noise complaints being part of it, so the neighbors expressed their concern that the park's aim for 2.5 million guests would produce so much noise that their property values and health would both be ruined by it. So it was safe to say that the plans were not very well received by the locals. Phantasialand didn't give up though. They kept changing their plans and kept requesting permission for other expansion options for years with absolutely no result whatsoever. At this point, the environmentalists and local activists had bonded together and kept blocking any developments from happening. Generally, the state politicians would support the park because of the 800 new jobs that would be created, and the city of Brühl would provide the most resistance. Every local election felt like another Phantasialand referendum. Would the new majority vote for or against the park was the most important question. After almost 10 years of legal ping-pong between the park and activists, on December 14th, 2012, the regional council finally voted in favor of a reduced expansion plan. The original 30-hectare plan would be shrunk down to 19 hectares. 17.5 hectares of that was designated for the water park, a theater and hotels, and another 1.5 hectares was designated for back-of-house facilities. After all these years of fighting, this felt like a win for Phantasialand. In reality though, it wasn't, because even though the regional council approved the plan, the city of Brühl was still able to stop any actual developments from happening. Building permits are given by the city and they have simply decided to not approve any of their expansion plans. Since 2012, the park and the city have tried multiple times to solve the situation. In 2014, the neighbors and environmentalists wanted to talk to the management of the park with a mediator present in an effort to find a consensus. These peace talks went on for a couple months and then the environmentalists walked away because they refused to agree to any plan that involved cutting down trees whatsoever. You know what, I'm not an environmentalist or a city planner myself, but when I look at satellite images of this supposed expansion area, even I immediately understand that you can't build a hotel between those trees. What did they expect the park to do? Build underground or make the hotel float above the trees? That actually sounds like something they might even do. Then in 2021, so another 7 years later, Phantasialand came with a big compromise. In the 2012 plan, approved by the regional council, it was already determined that Phantasialand would need to compensate for any trees that they would cut down for the development of something new. This meant that they would have to plant 2 trees somewhere else for every single tree they would cut down. Which already sounds like a very reasonable and environmentally friendly thing to do. But since the environmentalists were still blocking any developments in the city of Bruhl, Phantasialand decided to up the game. They proposed a plan in which they would get roughly 14 hectares of the Entenfang forest to expand the park, and as a compromise, they would plant 38 hectares of new, healthy forest somewhere else. That's almost 3 times the size of the expansion area. Again, this proposal was approved by the regional council, and then again, its development was blocked by the environmentalists and the city of Bruhl. And I can almost hear you thinking, why, in the name of all that's holy, do my jeans have these little pockets inside the bigger pocket? And that's a very reasonable question, but that's not what this video is about, so let's get back on topic, shall we? Why did they not agree with this plan that would create a new, healthy forest almost 3 times the size of the land that would be used for the expansion? They say that a newly planted forest cannot replace an 80-year-old forest with an existing ancient ecosystem. According to the neighbors, including Karen, planting a forest somewhere else will also not improve the situation for the city of Bruhl, because that somewhere else is apparently too far away for the city of Bruhl to be affected by it. And before you think planting a new forest closer to Bruhl would solve this problem, they came with yet another reason why it shouldn't happen, which is soil sealing. If Phantasialand were to build a water park with more hotels, this would mean adding roads and buildings on soil that would otherwise absorb rainwater, increasing the chance of flooding in the area. And even that is complete bullshit, because Phantasialand has already announced that their developments will take care of any flooding in the area. The plans include huge rainwater retention basins that will provide a much more effective solution than the current situation where the forest just absorbs it all. But the forest can only absorb so much rainwater, whereas a retention basin can actually take care of emergencies. It's such an annoying story, and I'm trying to make it fun to watch by including some jokes and commenting on the ridiculousness of the situation, but to be honest, I can understand why people are so upset about this. Of course, Phantasialand and the theme park fans are infuriated by the fact that this world-class theme park doesn't get a chance to expand. And on the other side, the city of Bruhl and the environmentalists are infuriated by the fact that Phantasialand keeps annoying them with too much noise and plans to cut down an entire forest. I mean, I get that we have to take care of the environment, but there are other ways to deal with it. Sometimes cutting down trees is necessary in order to develop something new. The very house you live in might have been the reason for trees to have been cut down. And I understand that we shouldn't just tear down nature whenever we please. Of course, I understand the basics of your argument. But when someone offers a very thoughtful and reasonable compromise, like planting a new forest almost 3 times the size of the one they are trying to cut down, don't you think a solution like that is the only way to keep things moving forward? I think there is always a reasonable compromise to be made in situations like these. And I think Phantasialand has offered that reasonable compromise in 2021. And by not agreeing with that reasonable compromise, you, as environmentalists, have proven to be unreasonable yet again. Some people might see this as a win for environmentalists and the neighbors of a theme park, but I don't see it that way. I see it as a huge win for Phantasialand, and here's why. Remember those mountains that look like a pile of crap? And those animatronics that will give you nightmares tonight? That was the level of quality that Phantasialand was known for. Over the years they made some big mistakes, and they showed that they had learned from those mistakes. If they would have had more than enough space to expand, and if they never had to deal with the neighbors being so close and the environmentalists blocking them from expanding, do you think the park would be as good as it is today? I don't think so. Klugheim probably wouldn't have had the impressive rockwork, because that's just a way to cover up the sound barriers. The same goes for all the facades in Rookburg. There's a reason why Terran's track crosses over itself 116 times in 58 different intersections and breaking the world record. It's because they had no other choice. They didn't have any more space for that coaster to go through, so they were forced to build a coaster like that, with another coaster, pathways and a restaurant tucked into the same space, if they wanted to compete with other world-class parks. Keeping their development plans of new attractions quiet has also proven to be a smart decision. Of course, as fans, we always want to know what's next, but Phantasialand doesn't announce things until they've already been built and ready to open, just to stop the neighbors and environmentalists from finding something that could possibly disrupt the development. In the last 20 years, they've simply torn down old attractions and replaced them with something spectacular, while the battle for expansion kept going. I just hope some kind of a solution is found before they are forced to tear down actual good rides. Or just stop building new rides completely. This is a saying I just made up. Don't mess with a creative theme park, because you might just give them the drive they needed to grow bigger than ever. To be honest, that saying is probably not going to catch on, but I hope it does. If you've made it to the end of the video, well done. Please consider subscribing because more videos are coming. And now, all that's left for me to say is, thanks for watching.